So I grew up in a home with my older sister and my younger brother. My parents didn't go to church and didn't really have a faith. My mother was brought up in the Catholic system and she turned away from that. My father, well, he called himself an atheist. He didn't have any beliefs at all. My father was a merchant seaman at the age of 17 and left Denmark and saw the port of Newcastle and jumped ship and became an illegal alien for a while and finally did the right thing and turned himself in, and they actually granted him citizenship in Australia. And then he met my mother. So yeah, it was tough times, I think, for my father being a merchant seaman, and we didn't see him much. He was away for months at a time, and he had a bit of a problem with drinking, and that caused a bit of conflict in our family. And so sadly, he took his own life when I was 9 years of age. So that had such a huge impact on our lives. My mother was obviously very shattered and became a very angry person. I thought it was all my fault because I thought that I could have done something to stop it. And so we were all just very lost and very broken. And you know, I looked at my sister and my brother, and they were just as lost as I was. So it sort of shattered any faith in God that I did have in the beginning. I always searched for God, but I just thought, well, there mustn't be a God. And that was the loneliest, darkest place of my life, because I did have that, you know, that God consciousness, and then all of a sudden there was nothing. And so I just felt very lost and alone. So I continued to search for God and really want to get to know God. I was very philosophical as a child, used to think, you know, why are we here and what's it all about? But as a very young teenager, I started getting into wrong relationships and drugs and alcohol, and really rebelled and was very self-destructive and full of self-hatred. I just had so much shame and guilt around me, and just thinking that I was responsible for what happened to my father. So I had a lot of shame around myself as a person, that I was just not good enough, and there was just something about me that wasn't right. I'd been sexually abused as a child too, so it was just a natural progression to, well, unnatural really, but it's just how things went. Like, I started getting into relationships from a very young age that were abusive. I ended up falling pregnant at the age of 16 to a very abusive man who used to hold shotguns at my head, and it was just a terrible time. And I just found myself going from one abusive relationship to the next, until finally I met a good man and got married, and he accepted me and my son, and we had 2 more children. It was then that I had some Christians knock on my door, and they just seemed to have something that I'd only ever seen once before, and that was with an old school friend who was quite rebellious, who became born again. And I remember picking her brains about it all, because I could just see that excitement in her eyes. I always remembered the things that she said to me, and then these people were saying similar things, and just the joy that they had and the miracles that they shared with me about what had happened in their own lives, that was enough for me. And I ended up going to a coffee morning, then to church. The following week, I got baptized by full immersion and baptized in the Holy Spirit on the same day, and just did a complete 180-degree turn from the life that I had. And I was just walking on cloud nine. Like, I just couldn't believe that I'd actually found this God that I'd been searching for all my life. And I really do believe I was searching all my life for God. So after leaving that meeting where I got baptized by full immersion and baptized in the Holy Spirit, my sister, who was a Christian at the time, handed me, it was a cassette tape that's showing my age. She handed me a cassette to listen to on my way home in the car. And one of the songs just really had me blubbering all the way home. It was called He's Alive and I'm Forgiven. And I just, that revelation of God's love and forgiveness just poured over me. I just could not believe this God that I'd found. And I was just so full of joy. And I walked on cloud nine for about 2 years, but then I found a lot of my past was coming back to me. And I felt like such a failure. And I thought, I can't even do this as a Christian. And I basically gave up on life at that stage. I thought, I'm not good enough and I'll never be good enough. And I attempted to take my own life a couple of times. And it wasn't till a very good friend came to me and she said, look, you haven't got a choice, you need to get help. So then started the process of a much deeper healing. You know, I felt like God had given me a 2-year honeymoon, and then it was time for the real work to start happening. And so I found myself a good Christian counsellor and just prayed through a lot of stuff, talked through a lot of stuff. And God was just setting me free from my past. A lot of the abuse that happened caused me to have PTSD. And I don't have any of that anymore. I don't get the panic attacks. I don't really get depressed. We all have days where we feel down, but it's just not a problem that I have anymore. I really feel that I've been set free, and it's just amazing. Life with Jesus is so different to how it was before I found him. Everything now makes sense. I look at the world, the things that are happening, and I can fit it all in with what I read in the Bible prophecy. And I know that it's true, I know it's real. Before I found God, I would sit there and watch the TV and think, what on earth is happening? You know, why are there so many wars? And I can see now it's all the pieces are coming together. All the questions I've ever asked in my life about life and the meaning of life are just all explained in the words of the Bible. I've raised 7 children and I just feel so blessed. I feel that God has been with me every step of the way. I'm so excited about what God has for my future. My testimony is one of healing, forgiveness, and grace. And I hope by sharing it, others will realize that there's nothing too big for God to redeem.